Hello, everyone. This is today's bubble tea is Horlicks. Horlicks, half sugar, half ice with pearls. Let's take a sip of this one. All right, the pearls are a little bit chewy, but it's good. This is from Tea Live. Good suggestion. Not bad. I know my friend in Singapore, his name is Shinky, loves this stuff. And it says it helps him go to sleep. I don't think I'll be going to sleep anytime soon, but nice drink. I hope that you guys will enjoy this. So everyone, grab your bubble tea and let's begin today's Bubble Talk. All right, so here we go. Welcome to today's Bubble Talk, and what we're going to talk about today is about spending time wisely and how do you gain more time, okay? So I'm going to kind of break the false narrative, and the false narrative is you can't really gain time, right? Because the one thing you have to understand about time is time is something that can never stop. It's not like Netflix, right? Netflix, you could pause. Netflix, you can binge watch later. Netflix, you can stop, do something else, and come back and watch at the same point, right? Time is nothing like Netflix. Time is something you have no control of, and it's something that will continue to go on over and over and over again. So what I tell you today is, what we're going to work on and focus on here is the only thing that you can control is not time itself, but the only thing you can control is you. Right? It is you. You are the only one that can be managed, not time. So let's begin with today's Bubble Talk. Now, spending time wisely, what does that mean? The very first thing I want you to understand is you need to know the value of time first. Okay? You have to know the value of time. So let me give you an example. A friend told me this once. It was it was just a very fitting story he gave me. And the example he gave was this. He said, imagine if you were to get $1,440, which US dollars, which means like if you're in Malaysia, that's like 5,000 ringgit. Right? It's like 5,000 ringgit. Imagine you get that every single day. $1,440 or 5,000 ringgit per day. But here's the catch. You have to, that's all you have is, you cannot save it. Once you use it, whatever you don't use cannot be saved or carried over to the next day, right? What would you do with that money? And the interesting thing is, if you think about it carefully, 1,440 is the amount of minutes there are in a given day, right? And if you think about it in the same way is, how are you using these minutes each and every day? Do you know the value of this time? The one thing to understand about time is, take a look at the first Bible verse today, which is Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 8. I'm just going to read the first sentence of this. It says, as no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. Right? What does that mean? Is we have no control. Death is going to come, right? The amount of time we have is set, and it's something that we can do nothing about, right? You have to value and understand that you have a set and limited amount of time. I'll give you another example. Like for myself, back in high school, okay, no computers back then. So you know how old I am, right? No computers, like no laptops. If you had a computer, it's at home, this big bulky thing. What happens was, when I'm writing a paper in high school, you know how I had to write it? I had to write it by pen. You have to write it in cursive by pen. And what's even crazier is, if you make a mistake, you have to start all over again. So if I have like a 20-page paper, you got to understand what my mind is going through, trying not to make a mistake. I valued every stroke, I took my time, and I made sure it was perfect. Right? In the same way too, if you really, really understand the value of time, the time that you have, then it's a lot easier for you to actually utilize your time too. The last example I give you is this. I'm going to tell you about how much time you really, really have. Okay? How much time do you really have is a question I want to answer right now. Excuse me one second. I have a runny nose, not because of coronavirus. It's because of it's the air conditioning. Air conditioning gives me a runny nose. But either way. So let's talk about how valuable time is, or how much time do you actually have. Like, we think to ourselves, you know, when you're young, I have so much time left, right? But reality is this. Most people, like in a given day, you're going to sleep for about 8 hours, which is a third of your day. You're going to work or go to school for about another 8 hours, right, which is 2/3 of your day. And they say the average time people use to eat is something like close to 70 minutes, okay? 70 minutes. And if you include snacks and everything else, a little bit more. But also the average time people use to cook is a little bit over 2 hours, which means that we're looking at roughly about 3.5 hours of your day is for eating, preparing, cooking, cleaning, all these other different types of things. Which means that in the end, how much time do you actually have? If you include travel to and from school, to and from work, they say you have roughly about 3.5 hours of your time if you minus all the other different things. Now, if you think about that carefully, that means 20.5 hours of your day is some things you just have to do. It's not your time, right? It's something you have to do. Which means if you blow that up to 100 years, that's more than 85% of your time is used on sleeping, your work or school, traveling, and your eating, prep, cooking, and cleaning. Which means that less than 15 years out of 100 years is actually your time to do something. You have to understand right now is it's not so much that, you have tons of time. No, you actually only have the time that you actually have is so small in the given day. You have to realize how valuable that time is, right? Number one, what was my first point? You have to know the value of time first. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you today is what? It is about scheduling your time, okay? The second thing is you have to schedule your time. Now, what does that mean? It means this. One of the worst things you can do, and the reasons why you waste time or you don't do the things you're supposed to do, is because you only do things when you think about it. Haven't you gone that? You've done that before, right? Only when it comes up in your head, you're like, oh, man, I forgot I had this meeting. I forgot I got to meet my mom. I forgot I have to do this. I forgot I had a project. Haven't you, like I did this once too, is I didn't realize I had a test in university until the day of the test, 1 hour before. And I was like, oh, there's a test. What do I do? And actually, I wasn't even an hour because I went into class wondering why everyone has a Scantron. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, we have a test today. I'm like, oh my goodness. I had to run out, buy a Scantron from the bookstore and come back. 0 studying. What did I score on that test? I was very, very lucky and very, very happy because I scored a 75 out of 100, 75%, which is like miracle. Absolute miracle. But I'm not saying that you should do this, right? Because I was praying in my head. I was like, God, please, what letter? It's like A, right? So, one thing is you don't want to do is you don't want to have your schedule in your mind, right? Because you're always going to forget it. What you need to do is get one of these things. Get one of these things, and this is what you call a schedule or a planner. Now, what you do with these things is very, very important. What I'm telling you right now is, just like this week for me is what? It's all the things I need to do. And the reason I do this is because why? It's because you don't want to forget your schedules, but you need to know that you have things to do, and you have to go over it in the morning. In the morning, what am I doing today? Schedule everything down, right? This is when you will be able to understand, this is the amount of time I have. The second mistake in scheduling planning that you don't want to make is you don't want to keep moving your schedules around. You have to think of your schedule as something like work or school. It's something that is set that you won't move around, right? You don't want to move around your schedule because what's going to end up happening is you'll get yourself into a habit where you don't do the things you need to do. Why? Because you want to go to friends, go with your friends to a movie, go out to eat, do this, do that. Instead, you should be doing other stuff for work or for school, meeting people, and then you kind of, what happens is we end up making other people upset because we forget or because, oh no, I completely forgot about it, right? You have to put it all in your schedule. And I'm telling everyone here, schedule. And I'm going to tell you something what's even more interesting is like, you think to your, like, Sky, why do you have like a schedule you write in? You know what I mean? It's like, don't you have like a phone that has a scheduler? Right? Don't you have like, an iPad or something like that? And I'm going to tell you why I don't do it that way. The reason I don't do it that way is because when you have a phone, right? When you have a phone, When you look at a phone, what's the first thing you think about? And you know what? It is not a scheduler. You don't. Scheduler is not the, like, it's like, even when people ask me, like, some people at church ask me, like, hey, I'm having a hard time reading the Bible every day. And I was like, how do you read your Bible? And they read it through their phone. And I said, you know why you don't read your Bible? Or you know why you don't do it? It's because when you look at your phone, you don't think about a Bible. It's the last thing you think about, right? The phone, you think about things like, for instance, texting, social media, and games, right? Those are the kind of things that most young kids today are looking at their phones. Like, there's a bunch of other things. The reason why I tell you to write it down, I'm going to tell you I'm going to just give you a small reason right now is, what happens to your brain when you write? Okay? When you're typing, it says you only use half your brain, but the interesting thing is, when you write, you're using both sides of your brain. Okay, and this is just something, and the two stats that are very, very telling of why you should start writing things down still is, number one is you memorize better, and number two is your retention is longer. And that's what I'm telling you guys. For myself is, I do it this way. I write all my notes wherever I go, meetings, whatever it is. I put everything in notebooks, right? And I want you guys to do this. It's a big suggestion for you guys to memorize better and to have better retention. Put everything into your schedule. Look at your schedule before the day starts and set your schedule the right way. When you do this, you're going to be able to start doing the things you need to do, not forgetting about the things you shouldn't be doing. Okay? So remember, number two is what? You really, really need to schedule your time. Schedule it. Don't wait for, your mind is good, right? You guys are smart, but you're not going to remember everything. There's just too many things to remember. Okay. Number three, right? Number three, what is it? It is prioritize your activities. Prioritize, okay? Prioritize your activities. We're going to take a look at this Bible verse is Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5, right? In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5, it talks about wise people, okay? In Proverbs 21, verse 5, it says, what do wise people do? Wise people are the ones that plan. There you go, right? The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty, right? The plans of the diligent lead to profit, right? Plans, right? One of the things the Bible is telling everyone, if you want to be wise, if you want to be successful or rich or all these other different things, the people who are diligent or leading to profit, whether it's physically, mentally, or spiritually, is you need to plan things out. Planning is super important. Now, how do I plan? Right? How do I plan these things? It is about prioritizing, okay? You have to prioritize your activities. So, prioritize your activities, okay? Oh, sorry, that was for the last one. I'm going to go to the third one now, is prioritizing your activities, right? And the verse we're going to take a look at is Romans chapter 14, verse 17. And Romans chapter 14, verse 17 says, the kingdom of God is not a matter of eating and drinking, but of righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. What is it saying? There's priorities to things in life, right? You want to prioritize. So if you're going to prioritize something, it means some things are more important than others. And I'm going to show you something very interesting. There's a picture I'm going to show you right now. And this picture talks about the 4 quadrants. Okay, I'm sure you guys can take a look at it. See, on one side it talks about things that are important, and on another side talks about things that are urgent, right? So there are things that are important and urgent, not urgent and important, and then there's important and not urgent, and not important and not urgent. There's 4 quadrants, right? Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Take a look at the first quadrant. First quadrant says urgent and important. Okay? We're talking about priorities. How do you prioritize your activities? Now, people who live in quadrant number 1 are the people that procrastinate like crazy, right? Because it is important and it's urgent. What's important and urgent? Like deadlines. Oh no, my test is tomorrow. Oh no, my project's due today. Oh no, what am I gonna do right now, right? It's super important, super urgent. You gotta get it done. And what people who are living in quadrant number 1 are the ones that procrastinate, and they're constantly living in high stress. Which means what? If you're constantly always running deadlines because you're always procrastinating, always late, what happens is burnout. You completely burn out if you live this type of lifestyle. Quadrant number 1 is there are things in life that fit in quadrant number 1, which is like you'll have a family emergency is one thing, right? Or you'll have things that come up just abruptly, and it's almost like say this black swan event of the coronavirus. It just came up all of a sudden. Now everything is shutting down. It's is not something that is a common thing. It just came up like an emergency. And these are the things, we want to keep it to those things instead of things like deadlines and things that we could have done earlier ahead of time. Quadrant 2 is interesting because quadrant 2 is what? Is not urgent but important, and this is the zone you want to be in, is quadrant 2. Right? Quadrant 2 is what you want to focus on. It's about planning. It's about goal setting. It's about meetings that are next week, deadlines that are next week, the week after it. It's about scheduling. It's about exercise, relaxation, and having good relationships with people. You see, if you're still stuck in procrastination, you have no time to make relationships with people. If you are in quadrant 2, you are balanced. Things are done early, you're never rushing, and the only things that happen are things that are emergencies or suddenly come up like a black swan event, or all of a sudden there's a family emergency you have to get to, but since everything is done, you're not going to be as stressed. Now, let's go to quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is interesting because it is not important but urgent. So you're like, what the heck is not important but urgent? Text messages, emails, and calls. These things, you got to understand, is people who live like this are a lot of young people who are into social media, the clicks, the likes, like, oh my gosh, who liked my picture on Instagram? Oh, cool, I got to like. These are all unimportant. It doesn't change your life. But they're urgent because like, kakao, line, and you're like, oh, I got to answer back. And you got to think about this. Even when people, these things are not really that important. They're urgent because, you think to yourself, you have to answer it. But these are unimportant. These are things that just pop up in the day. They're like interruptions that happen during the day, right? It's like you dealing with other people's issues. Other people's issues are other people's issues. They're not important. But they're urgent because like, oh, can you help me out? No, you don't have to deal with everyone's issues. And in quadrant 3 is when you overcommit. And the reason why is people who live in quadrant 3, they're actually people that are like the yes man. Like they don't want to disappoint people. They rather disappoint people than themselves. No, sorry. They rather disappoint themselves than other people. So you're kind of living off self-consciously about what other people want more. And you want to get out of that too, quadrant 3. Now the worst and the last one is quadrant 4, which is the most dangerous and the one that you get no productivity, the worst in time wasting. Quadrant 4 is not important and not urgent. Not important, not urgent, what is it? Social media. Excessive computer and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Netflix, right? Just excessive entertainment that's unnecessary. And what happens is people in quadrant 4 are just wasting tons of time, like wasting time, right? These are people that waste tons of time. They're lazy and they get nothing done. And these are the people, this is the one area you want to get yourself out of. What you want to do is you have priorities in those 4 quadrants, but you want to manage things well and stick in quadrant number 2. Quadrant number 2 is just balanced, well balanced. It doesn't mean you can't have personal time. It doesn't mean you can't do social media. It's very excessive these days, right? You can see it. Sometimes I'll be on social media while I'm walking across the street, while cars are coming by. It's the craziest thing, right? But it still happens. Okay, so now that we understand this is about prioritizing your activities and the things that you should be doing, it leads us to the last thing today, right? The last thing today is everything, all these priorities, all these activities that you do, the thing that matters the most of all these things is you have to have some purpose or goal in mind, right? Everything has to be done with some type of goal in mind. One of the reasons why people don't have a scheduler, one of the reasons why people just do things what's in their mind is because you have nothing to go towards, right? Like you really want to do this. You really want to do this. However, the problem is what? The problem is you just got nothing to go towards. You have to be aiming towards something. And when you aim towards something, then this is where your schedules, the more important things you'll put in there. Why? Because it has to do with school, to get a job, to fulfill your dreams, right? Whether it's a spiritual matter, a mental matter, or a physical matter like exercising, these are all things that are really important. And you have to have some type of goal in mind. Like for physical, very, very easy is what? I want to lose like 3 kilograms, right? That becomes a goal, and you set your priorities for those goals. right? When it comes financially, oh, I want to make, some people will say, I want to have at least $100,000 in my bank account, right? That's a goal people have, right? Some people want a house, some people want a car, and these are goals that people are striving towards. If you don't have these goals, right, what happens is you don't know what to do or what's important, right? So this is a very, very important thing that I hope that everyone understands, because the things that we need to do, these are things that with this, is spending your time, right? It's how you spend your time. The only time that's wasted is not time itself. Time can't be wasted. Why? Because technically speaking, time just keeps going. It never stops. It doesn't really care. What we waste is our time, my time living, right? The things that I can possibly do with this. With the 1,440 minutes, or with the 1,440 US dollars you get every single day, the question is, how will you use it? And how much are you going to waste? Okay, so I hope that everyone had a wonderful time today. That's today's Bubble Talk about spending time wisely and how to gain time.